Hello. I spent a week out shoveling snow, but stuff still happens. So what's up? You are a domestic terrorist. I am a domestic terrorist. We are all domestic terrorists. If you've heard that saying before, it might have been because you were watching CPAC in 2022. CPAC is a conservative convention, and they had a panel called We Are All Domestic Terrorists. During that panel, they displayed a banner that said exactly that on stage at CPAC. It was a lot. That image has since made the rounds on the internet. The projection is super fucking real. Essentially, during the Biden administration, Republicans spent the entire time talking about how they were being completely oppressed by the government and chased down by the evil communists, and they were transing the kids and blah, 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 blah. And so then when a report came out from the FBI in which the FBI said, hey, objectively, the biggest contributor to domestic terrorism is right-wing ideologues, they got really upset about that. What the FBI was saying was, if you look at the people who have been killed by terrorism recently, and you don't account for 9/11, it's mostly right-wing people doing the killing. But because conservatives are professional victims, they were like, oh, this is the government calling us all terrorists, and we need to band together because the government is trying to stamp out conservative values. Screaming and hooting and hollering about how the US government is calling normal citizens terrorists. Anyway, apropos of nothing, here is a list of people that the US government under the Trump administration has very recently, just this past month, referred to as a terrorist. These are all without charges, by the way. Renee Good was called a terrorist posthumously for driving a car near ICE agents. Alex Preddy was called a terrorist posthumously for defending a woman who was being pepper sprayed by an ICE agent. And 4 people who were involved in a protest against a church whose pastor is involved with ICE. Those 4 are Nakina Levy-Armstrong, Chantel Louisa Allen, William Kelly, and Don Lemon. That Don Lemon. Sidebar, we're over here. Hey, I'm not particularly interested in, defending Don Lemon. Why do I have to defend Don Lemon? I don't hate the guy, it's just Also, apropos of nothing, here is a list of things that the Trump administration has deemed as potential domestic terrorism. From an executive order, the Attorney General shall issue specific guidance that ensures domestic terrorism priorities include politically motivated terrorist acts such as doxing, rioting, /looting, trespassing, assault, destruction of property, threats of violence, and civil disorder. And finally, here's a list of things that the Trump administration has listed as potential examples of, quote, violent and terroristic indicia. Call now today if you're experiencing anti-fascism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for overthrowing the US government, extremism on migration, race, and gender, or hostility towards those who hold traditional American values on family, religion, and morality. Whatever in the fuck that means. So we have the US government, and specifically the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, labeling US citizens as domestic terrorists without charges or really anything, seemingly so that they can just greenlight violence against them. I've talked before about the massive increase in surveillance tech that ICE is gathering and how they've got the HSI department, which is usually supposed to be doing international crime ring investigations, instead going after who are essentially political enemies of ICE, which makes this line from that executive order all the more facepalmy. Quote, these terrorism campaigns often begin by isolating and dehumanizing specific targets to justify murder or other violent actions against them. Renee Good was essentially still bleeding out when a government official went on national television and called her a terrorist. So anyway, let's talk about pedophiles. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. When I was a young babe, I didn't go to my, guidance counselor or whatever and tell them I can't wait to grow up and have an online show where I talk about all the pedophiles in my government. I didn't do that. I probably was I want to be a spaceship boy. I don't want to be the spaceship. I want to be the boy on this. I want to be a spaceship. Anyway, the Department of Justice dropped 3 million more files from the Epstein documents, most of them heavily redacted, and all of them awful. These documents were supposed to have already been released in full and mostly unredacted, but that hasn't happened. And the Department of Justice would like you to know that they don't give a shit. The official stance of the Department of Justice is, we did great. We did a good job. That's all the files. Fuck you. They've acknowledged that there's still another 50% of the files that they haven't released, but they're nah, we're not gonna, That's me being the Justice Department. All right, so what is in the documents? A lot. Email records, investigation reports, collected tips from hotlines, Xbox Live ban notifications, Windows XP activation keys, apparently Peter Thiel's dietary restrictions, but they've been redacted. I want to say that, like, of course, content warning with this. It's about Jeffrey Epstein. It's going to be about really horrific things happening to children. But I also want to be very, very clear about the use of the word children. Were there women that were above the age of 18 that were involved in this entire scandal? Yes, absolutely. Let's not erase the girls here. There's a whole lot of stuff in these documents that touch on a whole lot of people. Some were people that we already knew were in the documents. Some are new entries. And some things are way more intense than the previous drop. There is one document that I've seen in particular that's getting a lot of attention that was pulled from the website after it was already released, and then people realized, like, oh, this is a really damning document about Trump, and then they pulled it. I believe it's been restored, but the main point is the document was talking about some things that were among the worst, most egregious allegations that we've seen so far. And not that I'm not going to repeat them here, but use your imagination, multiply it by 10, and you'll get close. That document was a bunch of tips collected from people who called a tip line. So it's a really good example of like a thing that's in the documents, but it doesn't mean that that's real or happened or is validated or anything. It means someone called the FBI and said those words. Now, I want to say I believe those words. I have no reason not to believe those words. And also, that's not how justice works. Like, that's why I'm not a judge. But that's not how justice works. We know these people are awful and terrible and evil. Absolutely. And I'm not saying that we should just like give them a pass. Like, oh, this is all fake. But understand that right now there's 3 million documents with basically no context, just flooding the internet. A lot of people want to be the ones that found something interesting and shared it. And that is going to cause a lot of noise, while there's people who are actually combing through all of this, getting meaningful information that can actually potentially make a case or connect things or make sense of stuff. Not that we can make sense of being attracted to children, but still. That said, there's also a lot of far more direct stuff, like emails and photos. So we'll go through a brief list of folks who are in the Epstein documents in meaningful capacity, starting with Donald Trump. You got your boy in the documents. His name is mentioned several thousand times. We knew this, and we knew for a long time that he had a long-standing relationship with Epstein and that he was gross with women and everything, and this should not be a surprise. Bill Clinton is in there still, plenty, and that also shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I also don't understand why anyone still thinks that, like, quote, the left gives a shit about Bill Clinton at all. Stick with the Bills. We got Bill Gates, who has already denied any allegations. There's apparently allegations that he got an STD on the island, and there's also allegations of like affairs and all sorts of other shit. And he says that's nothing. Bill Gates maintains that his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was one of trying to raise money from a rich guy, which is concerning to me because I feel like you don't need to go to a known child trafficker to ask for money if you're Bill Gates. But what do I know? I'm poor. Former Prince Andrew is also showing up again. He's not having a good day. Probably the people whose lives he ruined with his abuse are also not having a good day. But there's photos of him positioning himself over top of young women on Epstein's island. Care to explain that? My prince? Steve Tisch, who co-owns the New York Giants, had a whole lot of correspondence with Epstein about hooking up with girls. Girls. Kevin Warsh, who was just tapped by Trump to replace the Federal Reserve chair, is also in the Epstein documents. But the one that I want to talk about a little bit more is, you guessed it, Elon Musk. Famously, Elon Musk tweeted out that Trump was in the Epstein documents, and that's why the documents haven't been released during their whole lovers' quarrel last year. You may also recall that Musk has been very critical of people who have been at all associated with Epstein, and he tries to position himself as this, like, savior of people, and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it turns out that he was emailing with Epstein and was like, hey, dog, can I get an invite to a party? And so now, on Twitter, Musk is getting rolled by people being like, hey, what's up with the correspondence with the known pedophile, my guy? While he's all like, oh, I don't know who Ghislaine Maxwell was, and also, I rejected invitations to Epstein's island. Haha! In response to that, I'll just read you this little exchange between the two. Musk, do you have any parties planned? I've been working to the edge of sanity this year, and so once my kids head home after Christmas, I really want to hit the party scene in St. Bart's or elsewhere and let loose. The invitation is much appreciated, but a peaceful island experience is the opposite of what I'm looking for. Epstein.
Understood. I will see you on St. Barth. The ratio on my island might make your wife uncomfortable.
Musk. Ratio is not a problem for her. Gonna go ahead and let you stew a little bit on what ratio means here. Presumably means women, allegedly. Now, I want to say there's not confirmation that Musk went to Epstein's island. It does seem like he was too much of a loser to even get an invitation. But it also seems like he was actively trying to do that. But it's cool, because the guy who was like, oh, by the way, the Epstein files are real and Trump is in it, is now just saying they're a distraction. Cool. Oh, yeah. Ouija time. You'll recall that a little over a year ago, Luigi Mangione was charged with murder and stalking by the federal government as they accused him of killing Brian Thompson. Brian Thompson was the CEO of United Healthcare, which is a health insurance company here in the US, whose job is basically to minimize healthcare payouts while maximizing profit for investors. I would like to reiterate my testimony that I didn't see shit. I don't know what you're talking about. Shortly after being arrested and then charged with crimes that I didn't see him commit, Luigi Mangione became the focus of Pam Bondi, the somehow still Attorney General of the United States of America. Pam Bondi publicly and loudly directed the DOJ to seek the death penalty for Luigi Mangione. This is weird. I'm gonna go back to how justice works. That's not it. Essentially, the Republican administration is like, law and order. We got to be tough on people. Fire and brimstone. Let's bring death penalty to as many people as we can, including this guy. But I am here today to tell you that Luigi Mangione is no longer facing the death penalty because of the incompetent boobs in control of the nation. Yay, boobs. It's a bit of a technicality. Mangione is facing stalking charges, federal stalking charges, and they were trying to layer on weapons charges to bring up the potential punishment to the death penalty. This is where I am gonna just do my best to interpret law stuff. The judge in the case essentially said that while it makes sense that there would be weapons charges here and stalking and murder charges, it's incongruent with the stalking charges being non-violent, and therefore they can't really land the charges. The judge went on to essentially lament that this is a weird situation, but that the Supreme Court has made decisions that led to this. Here's an excerpt from an article about this on Gothamist. Quote, the judge said Supreme Court decisions over the past couple decades have changed how judges are supposed to assess these types of legal questions, forcing her to ignore Mangione's alleged actions. Instead, she said, she had to focus on hypothetical scenarios to figure out whether the stalking charges should be considered violent crimes. Quick scoreboard. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Department of Justice said he would never walk free on U.S. soil. He has a TikTok account now and has been posting from U.S. soil. Luigi Mangione, Pam Bondi, was like, we're gonna death penalty this guy. Just got dropped. Epstein files. Pam Bondi was like, we're gonna release them. They don't exist. We're gonna release them. We redacted them and didn't release them all. Stop asking questions. Also, you're a terrorist. I'll end this segment by saying that Luigi's journey is far from over. He still has a whole lot of charges at the state level in New York, and that trial hasn't even started. And that also has a murder one with terrorism attached to it charge. So he's still got a lot to kind of overcome. But if anyone needs a witness, I'm your guy. I don't even have eyes. For the last maiden story for today, I want to give an update on Sonya Massey. As a recap of Massey's story, in July of 2024, she called police because she thought that she saw somebody prowling outside her house. When cops showed up, they murdered her. They went into her house asking for ID. She had a pot of boiling water on the stove. She went to go move that off the stove. The officer in question was like, "That's a deadly weapon. Put that down." She then made a joke about rebuking him in the name of Jesus, and he shot her dead. Oh, also, just casually somewhere in there, he threatened to, quote, shoot her in her fucking face. Sean Grayson, the guy who murdered her, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison without the opportunity for parole. His lawyers are trying to push back on that, citing that he has recently been diagnosed with stage 3 and 4 cancer, and that this prison sentence is going to really be a downer. Grayson himself didn't show a whole lot of remorse throughout the trial. His statement largely focused on how he was unprofessional and cursed at her, and she didn't deserve that. I don't think that she deserved the bullets either. But here is a quote from Massey's father regarding the trial and Grayson's attitude. Quote, he showed no remorse. He was so cocky throughout this whole trial. Until the conviction. Yeah, that knocked the smirk off. Rest in peace, Sonya Massey. This shouldn't have happened. This doesn't make it better. Nothing could. But it's better than nothing. And with that, lightning round. Amazon is laying off another 16,000 people. How do they have employees still? Some of the families of those that have been murdered by the US strikes against random boats in the Caribbean have sued the US government for wrongful death. That's about as wrongful as the death can get. Zootopia 2 is the highest grossing animated film of all time. Microsoft is having some AI trouble. They recently had a big stock crash after less than wonderful earnings, and generally they've shown concern that people aren't super thrilled with the state of AI. And finally for today, scientists are planning to take a video of a black hole. Here's what they're gonna do. They're gonna stand outside and pull out their camera and zoom in. They're gonna pinch to zoom until they get to the black hole. That's not what they're doing. They're essentially gonna use a telescope to take like very slow periodic pictures of a black hole over the course of a couple months so that we can get a sense of like how they actually interact and move. That would be cool. I wonder if they have a good personality. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Stuff Keeps Happening. Head to skh.news for sources, bonus content, and a video that I've already produced of a faraway black hole. My name is Endeavorance. We'll talk again soon. Take care and be well.